now. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's public meeting regarding the anticipated application to amend the City of Ottawa's bylaw at 475 Terry Fox Road. This meeting is being hosted by the Councillor's Office. Before we begin, we'd like to start with the land acknowledgement. Ottawa is built on unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. The peoples of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. La ville d'Ottawa rend hommage au peuple et au territoire de la nation Anishinaabe algonquine. La ville d'Ottawa rend hommage à toutes les Premières Nations, à tous les Inuits et à tous les Métis, de même qu'aux précieuses contributions passées et présentes à cette terre. Tonight's meeting will proceed as follows. We'll begin with opening remarks from your ward councillor, Councillor Kathy Curry. Then we'll turn to a presentation from the applicant, Ironclad, and their consultant. The presentation will be led by Santan Singh, Senior Urban Planner at Ironclad. He's accompanied by his colleagues, Michal Kubasiewicz, Director of Development at Ironclad, Rob Garvey, Principal Architect at Architecture 77, Dario Dujakovic, Conceptual Designer at Ironclad, Doug Green, Traffic Consultant at Dillon Consulting, and Marietta Ruhland, Landscape Architect at Ruhland Associates. City staff will not be in attendance tonight. Provincial legislation and corresponding amendments to the city's pre-consultation bylaw have amended timelines within which staff must render a decision on application. As a result, consultation is now conducted prior to formal submission in order to incorporate resident feedback. This is at the discretion and agreement with the applicant. Following this, the floor will open to questions from the public. Individuals wishing to ask a question can do so by using the raise hand function or submitting their questions in the chat. Those raising their hands will be queued in line, prompted to unmute themselves, and given 2 minutes to formulate and ask a question. You'll be notified by my colleague Nick when you just have 30 seconds left in your time. We'll be alternating between written and oral questions, and any outstanding questions at the end of the meeting can be directed, will be directed to the applicant through our office. The meeting will end at 8:30. And I will pass it along to Councillor Curry.
Thanks, Andrew. So first of all, thanks everybody for being here. This is a very big crowd, which we're very pleased to see. It means some of our communications either through my newsletter or through community associations and then just word of mouth has worked. So glad that you all got the link and you're on this meeting. And of course, as Andrew said, it's being recorded. So afterwards, anyone you know that didn't get to see it, we'll give you the recording and you can send it or it'll be posted. So thanks a lot for coming. Just to introduce, so from the Kanata North office, obviously you heard from Andrew Elazi already, and then Nick Leonard is the other member of our Kanata North office staff who you might hear from in future as we go forward with the stages that we tend to go forward with. So I just wanted to say thank you both for being here as well to help out on this call. One of my main comments I'd like to make, and based on what Andrew had shared, this is a very early stage of any development. For those of you, and I see Lucas on the call, who've been with us for years doing these community consultations, I see a number of people, Diane, I can name a lot of people, you don't want to go down that road, but people who are used to old processes where the city staff would be here and, you know, it would be maybe even closer to when the file was going to the planning committee. This is very different. But I really want to thank all the members from Ironclad Developments for agreeing to do such an early consultation with the community. So if any of you are thinking, where has this come from? Like, what is going on? I want you to know this is really early stages. And this is part of the change to the provincial legislation, that there is this front end loading, this really early stage of let's get a sneak peek at what is being contemplated. So know that you will have a lot of time to give feedback and to give comments. And that this is really, we're really thankful to the developers here for allowing us to do this so early, and just wanting to make sure everyone was clear on that. The other thing, as Andrew was saying, is that there are no staff on this call, but that's not to say that staff won't ever be involved. They obviously will. And because we have a recording, it's very likely they will watch this recording. So your comments that you make today will also matter. So make sure you have some questions and you get your questions out. But if you don't and you need more time to think, there will be a lot of opportunity to send in questions and get some answers. The one last thing I would say is that as a city councillor, I sit at these meetings and I have no opinion on this development. What I can tell you though is that whether I had an opinion or not, the sign has been up on this property for decades, indicating something's coming, right? And I think even from some early comments I'm getting from people, they had an idea of what might come onto this property and maybe are confused about how it can change. And hopefully you'll get some questions answered tonight. But my job here always is to listen to what the community has to say. I will tell you that since the new legislation came in with the province, where there is a development requiring, applying for housing to be built, the planning committee has not refused a single application in years, because housing is in such demand, and you have a provincial government and a federal government that are demanding that we build as much housing as possible. So I will just say that regardless of anyone's opinion, the planning committee itself is struggling to ever say no to a development. So what we do in the time between now and when it comes to a planning committee is we make the development what the community would like, what is best for the community, what the community would prefer. And we go down that road of trying to figure out if we can get that. So as I said, I truly have no opinion on this. I actually don't know that much about this development right this moment. I'm just wanting to make sure everyone understands that since the planning legislation changed with the province, everything else has changed as well. So I start with that. I look forward to finding out exactly what the plans will be. I generally understand, obviously, it's housing that's being proposed, and I look forward to the questions and the answers we get tonight. So without further ado, I pass it over to the people who will present to you tonight.
Santan.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the information session for 475 Terry Fox. First, I'd like to thank Councillor Curry and Andrew and the team for organizing this session. I'd also like to extend our thanks to the residents here tonight for taking the time to join us. We have prepared a presentation on the proposed development, and I'll go ahead and share my screen to get us started. Guess everybody can see the screen okay?
All good.
Okay. Hey, so let me start by introducing Ironclad Development. We are a development and construction-based company in Winnipeg, Manitoba, with extensive experience in building multi-residential projects across Canada. To date, we've completed about 3,600 units nationwide, over about 1,200 units in BC, 1,800 in Manitoba, about 400 in Ontario, across 28 different projects. Currently, we have 10 active projects underway, adding more than 1,900 units in various jurisdictions across the country. This will be our fourth project in Ottawa. For context, we've already completed a project on 800 Eagleson, a 6-story building with about 120 units. Another on 10th Line Road, 260 units in 6-story buildings. Our third project is underway on Noila Leclerc Way with another 157 units. As Andrew introduced, I'll just run through the team quick. My name is Santan Singh. I'm the senior planner with Ironclad. I'm joined by my colleagues, Michal Kubasiewicz and Dario Dujakovic from Ironclad. Rob Garvey is the principal architect from Architecture 77. Marietta Ruhland, our landscape consultant from Ruhland Associates, and Doug Green from Dillon Consulting, our traffic engineer. During the question period, my colleagues and counterparts, they're available to address any specific questions you may have based on their area of expertise. So to give you an overview of today's presentation, I'll start by discussing the site context in detail, including the location, the current policies in the official plan, the existing zoning, and what we're proposing. I'll also cover where we stand in terms of the project planning, our site plan, landscaping schematics, shadow studies, and some perspective renderings reflecting height transition and an overall fit in the area. So the site is situated at the intersection of Kanata Avenue and Terry Fox Road. We were made aware that there's been some confusion with the Google Maps regarding the address, 475 Terry Fox. It tends to direct users to Campo Drive intersection, but actually the site is located at the intersection of Kanata Avenue and Terry Fox. This site, as said before, has been sitting vacant for decades and is surrounded by existing developments. To the east, there's residential single-family developments, while along Terry Fox to the west, there's neighborhood-level commercial and multifamily housing. Directly south across Terry Fox is the Carp River Conservation Area, with several significant developments are planned and as per the City of Ottawa's development portal. The area is undergoing a period of transition, particularly the Kanata North expansion. There are a few future developments in the vicinity, the big one being the Kanata North. Taking a closer look at the site, it spans about 1.23 hectares or 3.03 acres. The surrounding area offers a variety of housing, mostly single family in the vicinity, and our proposal is for multifamily development consisting of about 200 units. The proposal aligns with the intent of the Ontario's provincial policy statement, which sits on top of the legislature for these kind of applications, which encourages a diverse range of housing types and densities within cities. According to the Ottawa official plan, the site falls within suburban transit policy area, which supports mid-rise, which is defined as 5 to 7 stories, subject to a rezoning application. A bit of a deeper dive into the official plan designations for the site. Here we have a map reflecting the areas under Transact policy area as shown on the map. Terry Fox Drive is identified as a minor corridor under city policies. Specific policy 5.4.2.1.2 of the official plan permits mid-rise developments, typically 5 to 7 stories, along a minor corridor. The Transact policy area is typically designed to provide like a range of residential, commercial, employment opportunities anchored around the town center and is kind of connected to a downtown core via rapid transit. Just going to throw out a few factual information from the city's website, and as per the growth management plan highlighted in the official plan, the lands under the Transact policy are expected to meet about 46% of Ottawa's growth needs over the next 25 years. The city's growth management plan estimates about 40% increase in population from 2018 to 2046. And that's like 1 million in 2021 to 1.4 million in 2046. Now, most of the housing to cater that population would be ground-oriented forms, but about 10% of will be apartments. This translates to about 43,000 units, which much of this density is planned along main streets, minor corridors, and near rapid transit stations. To give a more context, that's about 2,000 units a year, roughly 10 projects this size. To talk about the current zoning of the property is LC or local commercial. This zoning permits a wide variety of non-residential uses as well as some residential development on the property. Our proposal is to rezone this site to a strictly residential zone that would allow for a range of residential uses, including mid-rise buildings up to a maximum of 6 stories. In the next slide, I can outline the request and explain the permitted uses along with some zoning mechanisms. So the ask, as mentioned, is to rezone the property from LC to residential 5th density. The purpose of the two zones are quite different. The LC zone primarily allows for local level neighborhood commercial, such as stores, restaurants, and retail spaces, similar to what we have across from Kanata Avenue. In contrast, the zone that we're proposing, R5, is focused on residential development, allowing a variety of housing forms from detached home to apartment buildings, along with compatible non-residential uses. In terms of the bulk regulations or zoning mechanisms, the maximum height permitted in the proposed R5 zone is 6 stories. The setbacks are about 3 meters at the front, which is the Terry Fox, 1.2 meters from the side, which is Kanata Avenue, and about 3 meters from the rear, which is the boundary abutting the existing residential development. There's also a landscape buffer requirement of 3 meters or about 10 feet with the neighboring property owners. In terms of parking, the required parking is about 1 parking space per unit for the first 4 stories and 0.75 spaces per unit for any additional story above 4 story. The visitor parking is 0.2 spaces per unit and bicycle parking is 0.5 spaces per unit. The proposal will be in compliance with all these requirements. We will not be asking for any variances specifically in terms of parking. Just to update you on where we are in the process, our discussions with the city staff kind of began back in August 2024. By September, we had a pre-consultation session with the city staff. During this session, we received some feedback and a detailed checklist of studies that we need to complete before we can formally submit an application. Since then, we've commissioned all the required studies that you can see on the screen. There are about 16 of them. And we've signed agreements with a range of local consultants, including experts in civil engineering, landscape, noise control, environmental assessment, geotechnical, traffic impact, archaeological assessments, and many more. All these studies are currently underway. This brings us to today, January 21st, this public information session. As it's been said before, this session is being held before we formally submit our application. Once all the studies will be completed, only then we will move forward with the submission process. So what happens when we actually submit the application? As per the Ontario's Planning Act, the rezoning process requires a city to issue a public notification once the application has been submitted. So I believe the residents within 100 to 200 meter radius from the property lines will receive a notification from the city and will have an opportunity to provide feedback and speak at a formal public consultation. There's also a technical review that takes place during which city officials and council will conduct a detailed evaluation. This review is usually followed by the formal public consultation, the details of which will be shared by the city officials. Once the review is complete, the city staff will make a recommendation to the housing committee. The committee then represents the recommendation to the city council, who makes a final decision to rezone the property. As you can see, it's a lengthy process, and we are still in very early stages before the formal application is actually submitted. That brings us to the site plan. So we're planning 3-story buildings that will house approximately 200 residential units. The breakdown of the units include about 71 bedroom units, 75 2-bedroom units, 32 3-bedroom units, and 23 studio apartments. Building A will run parallel to Kanata Avenue, while buildings B and C are aligned parallel to Terry Fox Drive. You'll also notice that the property line abuts residential properties to the east. To create a buffer, we're planning 3 meter or about 10 feet, as required by the zoning requirements. Landscape densely treed with a combination of existing trees and new plantings. We understand that landscaping is an important aspect of the project, which is why we've engaged a landscaping consultant from the very beginning of the project. In addition to landscaping, there will be several outdoor amenities, including central green space, a club space, a fitness center for the residents. These amenities are designed to serve the needs of the residents. The buildings will be thoughtfully designed to enhance the overall experience of the area, and they would have ample storage space and ground floor to accommodate residents' needs. For access, we are proposing 2 access points. One from Terry Fox Road and one from Kanata Avenue. During our pre-consultation with the city, the traffic or transportation department did not flag any concerns about the proposed access. We understand traffic and transport will be key aspects, which is why we've also engaged a transportation engineer who will be able to speak in more detail and about transportation plan for the development. Additionally, we've also requested a traffic impact assessment as required for our submissions. This is the underground parking, underground parkade. We are proposing 2 one-level underground parkades with the total parking of 89 spots. You can see 2 parkade ramps on the screen. One parkade will connect buildings A and B, and the second one will be under building C. As for the overall parking, the zoning requirements, as I mentioned, if you calculate the numbers, it requires 223 parking stalls in total. However, we are proposing 241 stalls, which exceeds the required number. Additionally, we will be providing 100 bicycle parking spaces as required with the zoning requirements. This is the landscape schematic prepared by our consultant. The plan highlights the key amenities such as seating spaces, hard surface courtyard, connected pathways, shade trees, and other outdoor recreational spaces. The pathways are designed to enhance connectivity with the property within the property and provide access to a nearby strip mall, Innsmill Park, and John Gooch Park. A design consideration is to try and preserve the existing trees along the northeast property line, where the property line borders neighboring residential areas. To achieve this, this schematic includes large tree islands or pockets along with the property line to help protect and preserve these trees. In addition, we've requested a tree conservation study, which will identify tree preservation opportunities and planting limitations. This study will help us prioritize the trees to be preserved, and the selection of tree species will be guided by the findings from the geotechnical and tree conservation studies. We will focus on using more variety of local native trees species in the planting palette. At the intersection of Kanata and Terry Fox, we've intentionally left a view triangle free of tree plantings. This kind of ensures that sight lines remain clear and unobstructed at the intersection. As I said before, we understand that landscaping will play a key role in addressing the privacy and environmental concerns. And our landscape consultant is available to answer any specific questions that you may have. Let's take a look at the cross sections of the building. This is looking from Kanata Avenue. The cross section kind of illustrates how the site abuts the existing residential properties on the east based on the topography and the elevations that exist. This particular view is from building A towards the houses on Innsmill with an observer standing on Kanata Avenue. As you can see, the average height of a person standing in the backyard would have sightline that aligns with about the second floor of building A, where it's important to note that there are trees in the area that may block any clear line of sight. And the distance between the exterior wall of the house, the existing house, and the exterior face of the proposed building A would be about 226 feet or about 69 meters. Also, if we consider the average or the mean height of the existing house, the sight line from the this perspective would align with third or fourth story of building A. This cross section is from building B, C, and the observer is standing on Terry Fox, looking north of Terry Fox. This is cross section C. Again, the point, considering the average height of the houses on Innsmill, the sight line would align with almost third story of the proposed building. If you factor in the trees, the sight line could extend to the fourth story. The distance would be, again, about 181 feet or 55.43 meters. Moving on to the shadow studies, which is required by City of Ottawa's guidelines. We are required to analyze 2 days with an interval of 2 hours for the September 21st or equinox. As shown, the shadow starts in the west in the morning. By 2 p.m., it moves towards the northeast, and by 6 p.m. there is no shadow remaining. Notice how as the day progresses, it falls in the opposite direction, but does not cast directly over any of the existing houses. The City of Ottawa uses a specific criteria for evaluation of these studies, like the shadow must not cast for 2 consecutive test hours within the no impact zone. Additionally, for the September test date, there should be no cast shadow for 3 consecutive hours on the main street sidewalk of the opposite side. And the way they define the no impact zone is that's the area made between the outermost exterior wall of the existing property and the shadow. So this analysis is specifically for the September test date as required by city's guidelines. This is the shadow study for December 21st, winter solstice. As you can see, there is noticeable difference in the shadow patterns compared to the September study. This is probably the worst day for shadows due to the sun's low angle. Even during this, the longest shadow does not cast for 2 consecutive study hours as per the city's criteria. The following slides, I can show some perspective shots. I would like to highlight that the illustrations used are for today's discussion only and do not represent the final massing or design of the building. The intention of these illustrations is to demonstrate the height transitions and give an overall sense of the buffer and show kind of how the buildings will fit within this site. Here is a close-up shot from Kanata Avenue. As you can see, this gives you an idea of a heavily treed buffer along the boundary line, as well as height transition between the buildings and the surrounding area. Here is a shot reflecting the intersection of Terry Fox, and the bottom one reflects perspective from Innsmouth. This is another perspective shot taken from one of the backyards of the houses that borders northeast boundary. As you can see, the combination of existing and new planted trees will provide a natural buffer between the site and the neighboring properties. With that, I'd like to conclude the presentation. Just to reiterate, the primary goal of this meeting is to hear from the community and residents before we formally submit our application. Your feedback is valuable to us, and we appreciate you taking time to share your thoughts. I'll pass things over to Andrew, and our team remains available to address any questions or concerns that you may have. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the presentation and right on time. So we'll open it up to questions and answers. For those of you who logged in after I went over this, individuals wishing to ask a question can do so by using the raise hand function or by submitting questions in the chat. Those raising their hands in the Zoom call will be queued, prompted to unmute themselves, and given about 2 minutes to formulate and ask a question. You'll be notified when you have 30 seconds left by my colleague, Nick. And we'll be alternating between written and oral questions depending on the pattern of questions. I have a few submitted ones in the chat, so we could start with those as questions maybe arise orally. So the first question is by Ida, asking what are the apartment sizes? Oh, okay. Before you do, the raise hand function should be right under reactions. So if you it should be down on your chart. You just under reactions, you should be able to raise your hand, like Ken has now done. So I'll start with the first question, Santan, and you can allocate to the appropriate person. What will be the apartment sizes?
I can try and answer this. So we're proposing like 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, and studio apartments. So 1 bedrooms as of now would range between 490 square feet to about 690 square feet. 2 bedrooms would range between 682 to 913 square feet. 3 bedrooms would be about 1,000 to 1,200 square feet, and studio apartments would range between 375 to 475 square feet.
Great. And just to make sure I interpreted the question right, often when people ask this, they often mean whether it's a 1, 2, and 3. So could you give us a breakdown of whether the number of studios, the number of 1s, the number of 2s?
Sure. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so we have 71 bedroom apartments, 75 2 bedrooms, 32 3 bedrooms, and 23 studio apartments.
Okay, great. I'll pass it over to Ken Moore here. Ken, you're prompted to unmute.
Okay, it's actually Catherine Moore, but I'm with Ken. I just wanted to provide some background information for our counselor, Kathy Curry. For those of us who purchased our homes originally, there was to be city parkland and a bike path along with Terry Fox Road. with the realignment of Terry Fox Road, it created this small triangular piece of land, which, as you can only understand to those of us who had just purchased homes, also created a bit of a nightmare scenario. We worked in conjunction with the councillor, Marianne Wilkinson. We had several community meetings. We met at the library. This property area was rezoned so that the residents of Innsmill would not have to face a nightmare scenario such as this. So I wanted to provide that background information because this is something the city had agreed to with the residents of Innsmill and surrounding area. And just wanted to note that as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Do you have a question you wish to know? Okay. Thank you for the comment and the background there, Kathleen. I'll go to the chat here. Are any of the apartments targeted for affordable housing?
Not to my understanding. I can request Michael if he wishes to speak about that aspect. Go ahead, Michael.
Essentially correct. This is market housing to be rented at market rents. And that's the kind of product and development that's anticipated.
Great, thank you. F. Gilbo, you're prompted to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, so the first thing I'd like to do is to say that we started a petition to halt residential development there. I don't know if you're aware. And we started about a week ago, and we have close to 400 signatures so far. That's the first thing. And it's in line with the first comment that historically this was zoned to be something different, and it's coming as a surprise to all the residents here. And the other question that I have, well, I have a couple of questions. One for Kathy is, when is the next time the council is going to meet to discuss this, so I can align the submission of my petition with that timing? And the other question that I have is, weren't there any other sites considered? Because we're surprised to see that you want to build housing literally 100 times more dense than what we have currently in the area, in that little corner that's very tight. That comes as a big surprise to everyone. Why isn't there another site anywhere else to accommodate the additional housing? We agree that there's a housing crisis, but this housing density in this tight a space is surprising. So were other sites considered is the other question.
Okay, so I'll answer first. Thank you for that question. So when the developers here explain the process of the dates, what they were trying to help make clear is that they haven't even submitted an application yet. Like, so they're not even at the application submission stage, right? And so in terms of the timing then, when they actually do get to that stage, which right now I'm not sure when that is, and they may have a better amount of timing, but what they won't be able to tell you, so they may say, okay, well, say if we put in our application by the end of, the summer, then what we don't know is how long it will take city staff to deal with that application. But there is a limit. They can't take forever. And the province's rules have tightened that timeline up. But then it has to get on a planning committee agenda. So I guess what I was trying to say at the beginning is there's still a lot of time to give feedback and talk about this application, but it all depends as to when the application actually goes into planning staff so that they can review it and that they can make their comments. And sometimes planning staff have to send back the application to the developer to say, we have questions about this, or what do you think about our suggestion here? And then there's a little bit of back and forth, right? So I'm sorry I can't give you a date, and I don't think, and I'll leave it to the developers to make more of a date in terms of what they can control, but some of it is beyond our ability to have a crystal ball and predict when it would get to planning staff. So I will say that. The other point about why wasn't another site considered, I guess Ironclad would have to answer as to whether they own land anywhere else, right? So the idea is that a developer will buy a piece of land that is available. And this has happened all over Kanata, right? Where there's a piece of land available, a developer buys it, and then sometimes they have to rezone it, or sometimes they have to just ask for a slight change to the what is allowed under the Planning Act. So developers always have the right to do that, right? Buy a piece of property and ask for it to be rezoned. Staff don't have to agree that it should be rezoned. To the earlier comment by Catherine Moore, staff could refuse this. They could say, we're not allowing this to be rezoned for a reason, but that is something that planning staff have to determine. I guess what I was saying at the very beginning is whenever planning staff have agreed, planning committee tends not to disagree with staff, but really planning staff would have to agree to do this rezoning, and that's what the application is.
Santan, do you have any additional comments?
Just a quick comment to carry on what Councillor was saying. We can only buy properties that are for sale. We do have 4 projects in the city of Ottawa, on Eagle Point and 10th Line and on Noël-Leclerc. But again, we would only consider the projects that are being brought to us for development and that are being offered.
Great, thank you. F. Gibo, do you have any outstanding questions? Because your hand's still raised.
Yeah, thanks for letting me speak. Thank you so much for all the answers. And then thanks for providing the details and also thank you, Kathy, for outlining the whole process and the fact that we're so early. So thank you. The other question that I have then is just out of curiosity, how much, if I may ask, I know it's a bit of a pointed question, but how much was the land when it was purchased by Ironclad?
I think I have to. So the purpose. I'll let Santan comment if he wishes, but the general scope of the meeting is to discuss the zoning application. But I'll pass it over to Santan, see if he wishes to comment.
I don't believe we can share the number. Any quick thoughts on this, Michael? I don't believe we can.
Okay.
This is a private deal between 2 parties.
Perfect. Yeah, no, understandable. And as I said, the purpose is to discuss the anticipated application at the site. So thanks a lot to F. Gibo. In the chat here, I have a question. Will these be apartments or condos? That is to say, are they rentals or for sale? And obviously, I understand this isn't a zoning question either.
These would be rental units.
Okay. Perfect. Jennifer Wu. Sorry, you've been prompted to unmute yourself, Jennifer. There you go.
Okay, I have 2 questions. If it's for rental property, for rental apartment, how much you charge for the rent?
So again, I'll have to, the scope of the presentation will have to stay related to the anticipated zoning aspect of the application. So if we could try to keep the questions within the scope there, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the other question is, I would like to ask the company, how many people how many families do you really notify you're going to have a development over there? So when we talk to the neighbors, 99% of neighbors, they don't know. So I'm not sure how you're going to specify that's a transparent in your letter. And in that case, I don't feel very comfortable for in the future stage. I will worry you are not going to make every neighborhood, like every community, people know about your process.
I can go ahead and give a quick comment. So in anticipation of this particular event, we did reach out to the immediate 14 neighbors via letters, and those were hand delivered to them to inform them about the upcoming development and today's meeting. But like it's been relayed before, we are private developers. We don't really notify people. That would come in later when we formally apply. And a city has a process of issuing formal notifications. So when we formally apply with the city, everybody who's within 100 meters or 200 meters, as required by the Planning Act of Ontario, they will get notifications from the city staff. That is when the actual formal public consultation takes place. This was just our way of being transparent and do one before we have an application.
I disagree about that part. Because that's 200 units. That's almost double the entire population for this little area, right? So now you only inform for 14 families, 14 houses. We cannot present the entire Innsmouth, entire Chantonio, entire community here. So in that case, as I said, I don't feel very comfortable for whatever you did the research or whatever you so far you presented to us will become really transparent to everybody.
So Jennifer, can I just make a comment? So one of the things that in the city councilor's office, one of the things we do is we make sure we send out as much information as we can. So, you know, the developer has to, by the Planning Act, you know, alert whoever, but we put it in I have a bi-weekly newsletter that I send out. I sent it out to the presidents of all the community associations. They have newsletters as well that they send out the information. The kanatanorth.ca website, which is run by the city councilor's office, will have this presentation and this recording up there. So when the consultation takes place where the city staff put it up on Engage Ottawa and ask for feedback, we will put that in the newspaper, the Community Voice, who's on this call right now. I see Neville Hunt is on this call. It will go in, it will be covered in the newspaper. We will put it on our website. Obviously, Kanata Lake's president will probably send that out in her newsletter. So we do try to make sure we send it out as much as we can. We have a Facebook page. We have other forms of social media. So we continue to keep sending things out along with the City of Ottawa. And, you know, one of the best things about the Kanata Lakes Community Association is that they are at every event. And I'm sure there's members on this call right now. I can't see everybody, but they continue to try to send out through other little Facebook groups as well. But know that on the city website itself, all of this information will be up there when the planning application actually is applied for and is being looked at by city staff. So there's a lot more to come, as I can't stress enough. This is really early days and more information will be available in many different spots.
Well, I don't know how many people here in this meeting really it's from the kanatanorth.ca website. And I think that the most of people are here because we're door-to-door knock them and we put on the mailbox to let everybody know.
Yeah,
it's not really from your website because nobody gonna go to your website to check the other public meeting. And during that period was the Christmas holiday time. Nobody really gonna go to those websites to try to find the information, right? Even in the builder's letter, they even did not say we can find your meeting invite on your website. They just say you will host the meeting, right? So I'm not sure in that case, if they just want to make the profile low or they just want to make the application without knowing anybody.
Well, I mean, I can only say that we do this process every couple months for every development application. And so we tend to try to do the same ways. But Jennifer, if you have other suggestions, I'm absolutely happy to send it out in as many ways as we can to make sure everyone can listen to this video here and get the same information. So if you have any other suggestions, I'm happy to take them.
I have another question. Since you're going to have a 200 unit, based on the current Ottawa statistics, every single family size, average size will be 2.9 people, with the children with 1.8 kids per family. So currently, as I know, for our school space, especially for Earl of March, already have 34 portables. Now you certainly increase almost 360 kids. So how we gonna to start to address those type of questions?
Councillor Curry?
I will comment. So,
Yeah.
you know, Jennifer, this is one of the challenges as, you know, I used to, well, maybe, you know, I used to be a school board trustee and chair of the Ottawa Carleton District School Board, which oversaw Earl of March and AY Jackson and West Carleton, and all of our schools in Kanata are overcrowded. One of the challenges we have is we let the school boards know when there's ever a development, a housing development taking place. And so I asked the question at planning committee a couple of months ago. I said, do school boards ever respond and say, we don't recommend any more housing gets built here because our schools are all over full? And our planning staff answered and said, no, they don't. School boards never say that. They say, thanks for letting us know. And then that helps them with their planning to build a new high school or elementary schools. So believe me, I hear your frustration. Every one of our schools is significantly overcrowded, and school funding to build schools is all provincial. So it doesn't make any sense to me. It never did, that municipalities do not control how many schools are built. The province does. And, you know, the school board makes their arguments to the province to say, all of our schools are overcrowded. We need more funding to build more schools. And then the 72 school boards across the province are all saying the same thing to the provincial government. And so the funding that's available gets sent to the highest demand. It may be Kanata North. I know there are sites all throughout more of Kanata North where there are sites for secondary schools and elementary schools, but that process is so slow that inevitably all of our schools end up being overcrowded in Kanata, and we have portables at every single school. So I just will give you that information that's a provincial election issue about the funding for schools. But I was shocked to learn that school boards do not comment and say, don't build anything. They simply say, thanks for letting us know. So I just
Thanks, Councillor Curry, and thank you, Jennifer, for the questions. We're gonna move on to a written question. Also, just to build off of Santan's earlier comment, all property owners within 120 meters is the number will receive written notification, as well as technical agencies, that is to say school boards and the like. Also to note that there is a current development application at Earl of March to expand the school there. So just a note. To Santan here, is the Mississippi Conservation Authority consulted as a stakeholder during this application?
We have not yet. Is it part of a general circulation list by the city?
So good question. I don't know whether they fall in as a technical agency, but that's a good question to follow up on.
Okay, we can follow up on that. Thanks.
Okay. I'll pass it over to Patrick. You'll be prompted to unmute.
Sure. Is my audio working okay? Okay, perfect. I just had a question, actually, two. The first is about the zoning notice that, first off, thank you, Santan and Kathy and Andrew. The zoning notice that's on the property, if someone knows where that's located and could just set me straight, I'm sure I've driven past it many times and just not seen it, but just looking on Google Street View, all I see is the sort of a ruined, faded sign on the corner there, and I don't know if that's it, or what obligation city planning has to ensure those signs are legible, if indeed that's the one, but just that'd be great if someone could let me know where that is. The second thing is just around traffic and I suppose rate of growth. Traffic is obviously a subjective thing, and if you compare another ward that's a lot more density or like, you know, downtown Toronto, they're going to say, you know, you have it great there. To me, it's gotten a lot more busy in the last few years, particularly with the closing of Richardson Side Road, formerly connecting to directly to Kanata Avenue when the neighborhood was built in that area. That pretty much forced all Western traffic through that single gateway onto Kanata Avenue, with our only southern eastern gate being the other end of Kanata Avenue, which is a single lane, bit of a nightmare. And again, that's subjective. That's my opinion. But we've yet to see the impact of the high density properties that are going up along Kanata Avenue near the Kanata Centrum. And I'm just wondering what controls the city planning has in place to ensure that that rate of growth doesn't outpace our infrastructure, just so that it's throttled in such a way that we have checks and balances along the way to ensure that we're not overwhelmed with or inundated with traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. I can try and field the rezoning question. I believe the zoning notice that you're talking about might have been a previous notice. We haven't placed anything on the property because we haven't applied yet. So only once we formally apply, there will be a zoning notice on the site posted by the city officials. To talk about the traffic, I believe we did consult with the traffic department of the city during our pre-consultation. They did provide us with like the 5-step TIA process that we have to follow, which is why we did engage Dillon Consulting to do our TIA. So I'm going to invite Doug Green if he can come and talk to you about the traffic process here.
Hey, Santan, thank you. Certainly, there's a lot of controls in place by the city to manage traffic, and part of it is the requirement to do a traffic impact study. And so we've taken a look at what we feel would be generated by the site. And the city has some very prescriptive requirements on how to do that. And even though we have 200 units, in the AM peak hour, we're projecting, and the city using the city's numbers, that would generate 10 inbound vehicles, 23 outbound, and in the afternoon peak hour, 26 inbound and 18 outbound. We would also expect a number of transit riders. So in the morning, we've got 8 transit riders coming in, 17 going out. 10 in the afternoon peak hour coming in and 8 going out. And then there's a small number of walking trips as well that we're anticipating. So all in all, the larger high-rise buildings, they don't generate as much traffic as the low-rise single-family houses. You tend to get older folks that live in those, or people that don't have the same type of commuter requirements that we would normally see in a single family. So we do see a much lower trip generation from this type of development than you would from a regular single family or townhouse development.
Perfect.
Andrew, I would just want to make a slight comment there. Patrick, thanks for that question on the traffic. A couple of things I just wanted to say is that the city, to the point here, the city will do and ensure there's a traffic impact assessment done from their perspective as well. And, what I'm just going to share here is that when we've seen developments at either the other end of Terry Fox at March Road or in Kanata Centrum, what staff continually do is they look out decades, which is, we find sometimes frustrating. And they say, well, look at councillor, there's going to be, well, you already have the Innovation Drive Park and Ride. You're going to have bus rapid transit up March Road that will use that as a main station. You're going to eventually have stage 3 LRT to Terry Fox. And then you're going to have, additional buses because the new development at Centrum, the new development in the tech park and the new residential there will drive many more bus routes. So Patrick, all that to say that that's one of our challenges is that sometimes they base their traffic impact study or assessment. Oh, the other is that Campo Drive will be widened, right? So there's a much bigger Campo Drive plant. Kanata Avenue is supposed to be widened. So their staff will take all of that into consideration. So, I absolutely hear you. There are definitely challenges there. And, we try to do what we can with traffic calming and all the rest of the smaller things we do, right? But traffic staff will look at everything in the area holistically in terms of traffic flow, and they will include all of these things that are to come or aren't fully being utilized. There was another comment that I was going to make on an earlier question, and your question about zoning. So on that sign there, Patrick, I don't believe there's a zoning on that sign. I don't believe it. I think it might say commercial space for lease. It said something a long time ago, right? But what happens is staff will say, but on Geo Ottawa, you can go on and do the layer of Geo Ottawa that will tell you the zoning for everything in the entire city. So it is known, but usually it's not really on a sign. And when the development application is actually submitted, that's when the city sign goes up, right? And then you see those standard City of Ottawa signs and it tells you what is the application, who can you contact, and that will go right on that piece of property. But it is Geo Ottawa that will tell you, Geo Ottawa, and a layer for zoning that will tell you what all the zoning is in the city.
Thanks a lot for your comment. Just to address a comment in the chat here. Someone has commented that many people were unable to log in. You can follow up with us after the meeting if that were the case, but as far as we're concerned, a good amount of the registered persons were able to log in. But yeah, please follow up with us if that was the case. A landscaping question: how long does it take for a tree to grow tall enough to block the view of the building from the existing housing?
I can try and give a brief description. Kind of depends on the trees. There are existing trees in the area as well, but I can request our landscape consultant, Marietta, to provide a detailed answer to that.
Hi, yes, that's why we want to see about preserving as many of the existing trees as possible. That would provide a sort of a instant screen. There are quite a number of existing trees on private property also that present a screen right now. We do know that there is some site constraints with soils. So, but this part of the site, because we're away from the buildings, we can plant large canopy trees, which is great. So we will be planning on planting what we would call large caliper trees, or not sorry, large canopy trees, such as maple, hackberry, maybe some oak. Have a good variety of trees. They will take some time growing, but if you actually plant, like I know earlier on, everybody thought, oh, why don't we plant large caliper trees with a tree spade? We'll get there much faster, but in actuality, you don't, because those trees take so much longer to establish that a smaller tree tend to catch up with the larger caliper trees. Now, you don't want to have a really skinny tree, but you know, something that's standard in the landscape industry is about 70 mils or 3-inch caliper tree. And that one is sort of a good optimal for fast establishment. And yeah, so basically we are trying to preserve as much as we can of the existing trees that have already been established on the site to provide that screening. And I think we have a very good opportunity to do so here.
Great, thank you for the answer there, Marietta. Jennifer Van Dusseldorp.
Good evening. Thanks for hosting the meeting and providing us with some information. I do have tremendous concerns about the buildings. The height is just, it's not acceptable, really. I mean, there was a comment that was made in the initial information that came out that said it was keeping in line with the aesthetic of the community. And we don't have anything that big on this strip, on this road. The highest that we have, I think, there are 4-story buildings. And what you also have to consider is what's behind them. Those houses are on an escarpment. So you can talk about planting trees, which is fantastic. More trees, excellent. But the height of them is not going to block out the top 3 stories of a building. They're still going to be having people staring over into your yards. And that's a big concern for me. That's a tremendous lack of privacy. I understand the need for housing, but surely something this monstrous, there can be some adjustments made, because it's really not tenable. It's not acceptable. Nobody should be accepting this. That's all I have to say.
Thanks for your comment, Jennifer. I have a question here in the chat. By seeking to rezone this property, are you setting a precedent for other developers to pursue similar high density projects in areas originally zoned for low density, community focused uses? If the rezoning is denied, are you, Ironclad, willing to adjust your proposal to fit within the current LC zoning, perhaps by including smaller scale housing combined with commercial units?
Thank you for the question. We haven't really thought about, changing our plan here. And again, our plan kind of stems from the Ontario's provincial policies and the Ottawa's official plan designations. Terry Fox being recognized as a minor corridor, the policies allow 5 to 7 stories along these corridors. And just to give a perspective, the city policies do define the heights of the residences or the apartment blocks. So anything less than 4 stories is considered a low rise. From 5 to 9 stories is mid rise. Anything over 9 stories is actually a high rise. So I believe we are well within the policies, which is why we haven't really thought about changing our proposal at this point. But I guess that being said, that's the point of this session here, to kind of get the community feedback and reflect on those comments and suggestions.
Great, thank you. Jennifer, unless you just accidentally haven't removed your hand, I'm gonna go to Lee Cusack.
Hi, I'm Raphael. I am with Lee. First of all, Jennifer, I want to echo your thoughts on the height issue in terms of our little local community. Secondly, Mr. Gibo, I don't know where you are, but please keep us in mind. 129 Inns Mill will sign the petition as well if we can get a copy of it somehow. My questions are to Mr. Singh. If you can just first of all, I presume we can get a copy of the formal presentation that was shown on the screen. If you can, I think I emailed you specifically about getting access to the Zoom call. So you have my email, perhaps you can send it to me directly. My questions are related in the context of getting approval, should you get it. Well, just for the benefit of those of us that live in the area, what would the critical path timeline from the day you get a shovel in the ground to the day a potential building would be completed in terms of all of the disruption that we as a local community will probably be burdened with? That's the number one. Second of all, I'm just curious what the profile, what your existing profile for the tenancy is you mentioned in the response to parking about the ins and outs during a normal day. With that number of units, unless you're appealing to a senior tenant, somebody 55 plus, I'm not sure that's a legitimate number, at least that I can accept. And I'm just curious, as a last point, have you actually purchased the land? And in the sense that the deal is closed, or is this a conditional deal subject to getting the zoning and the approval to build what you want? On that note, I'll leave it to you, Mr. Singh, to answer those questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lee. Yes, I did get your email and I did provide you the link for the meeting as well. In terms of sending you the presentation, this meeting will be recorded and it will be on YouTube for everybody's access. To answer your second question about the timelines, that is contingent upon us completing all the required studies that the city requested. So we are we're making progress. So we haven't really completed all of them. I don't want to make any assumptions, but it'll be once we formally apply, the city told us it could take 120 days to actually process the application. Having said that, then it takes some more time to actually reflect on the site plan control or development permit application. And it is, I believe, approved for a period of a year or a couple of years, following which we do apply, we have to obtain a building permit. And after we get the building permit, that's when the construction starts. I can request Michael if he wants to add any comments on that, specific to timelines.
There was a question about from the time the shovels go in the ground. So typically, once all the approvals are in place and we're able to actually begin excavation, it's typically around 14, 15 months to completion. So that's one of the things we pride ourselves on, is actually delivering the product expeditiously to the market.
Thank you for your answers there. Lee, does that address your question there? Raphael.
Partially, yes. What about the profile of the tenant base?
So go ahead, Michael.
Thank you. There isn't like a specific, very narrow target demographic. The units, as Santan mentioned, are a mix of units. It's a fairly flexible form of housing attracted to different kinds of households. We would expect, based on our experience on the Eagleson project, a good number of younger households moving in. The unit mix includes, in terms of 3 bedrooms, it's 32 units out of 200. So we're not expecting, that's about 16% of the units are 3-bedroom units that would likely be family units. We're not expecting that to be the primary demographic, but it really all depends on the market conditions when we get to the project completed. We can't engineer who's going to come and apply to rent the units once they're put on the market. We do our best to try and anticipate, but it isn't something that we can define with great precision or quantify.
Check if we have. Perfect. Thank you. I'll turn it over to David Chen.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the inform session. I mainly have 2 concerns. I want to first come back to the sign Patrick mentioned earlier. I did see that saw that sign is intended for mainly medical buildings. It's mentioned chiropractor and dental and all those. That's very well meet the local commercial current zoning. So that's exactly meeting our community needs, because our community really need more medical practices. So this thing, I want to put this to our councillor Casey attention to the real community need. So the rezoning application really is contradicted to the community need. So I would like Councillor Casey really committed to our community, represent community need. So that's the first thing. The other thing I want to mention is I really don't like the developer's letter. So the letter, it seems to misleading the community. In the letter, you say you
just have 30 seconds there, David.
Yeah, okay. This to complement the community, but from my understanding, that's not complement the community. It's really contradict to the community need. So that's what I want to say. Also, the other thing, I want to add one thing. Earlier, the presentation saying the process mentioned the sign, after the sign put up, and the committee will make a decision. But what I'm seeing now from the city webpage, in the process, there are public meetings required because for the zoning bylaw mandate. So after the sign put up, public meetings are required. So I'm sure I would ask Councillor Casey try to reach more and more community members to have the meeting for the public meeting. So also I'm sure we will have a strong objection to this rezoning application, because that's really contradictory to the community. Thank you.
Yeah, so just I want to say a couple of things. The community meeting that planning committee the planners are referring to is the public meeting where planning committee reviews the application, right? And that's where community members can come and make a delegation directly to the community, to the committee, to the planning committee. So that's the community consultation, right? And we've seen recently at planning committee, we had 40 delegations of people saying that they didn't like a particular application. We've been there at times where there's been 90 presentations and 20 and 10 and 5. So that's what planning staff are talking about, is that we have that public meeting that is recorded as well, where the community can come and speak directly to the city councillors who will be voting on the application. and giving them their feedback. So planning staff will present, the developers will present, the community will present, and that's the public meeting they're referring to. So that absolutely will take place depending on what planning staff decide. And then the other thing I would say, David, is that the only challenge that I have is you are absolutely right. The community does need more medical facilities. There is going to be potentially a community hub that Stittsville is looking at that would serve Kanata North. But in terms of those community amenities, we have Kanata Centrum not very far away. And I'm not arguing for or against. I'm saying this is what staff may look at. They may say you've got a mall across the road, you've got Kanata Centrum close, and the community need is also housing. And so I just say that to you because I sit on planning committee. I see this all the time where community will say they really need this. And then another member of the community will come to that same meeting and say, we need more housing. And I just wanted to make one other comment that someone had asked about how much the rent might be and that we didn't give the developers an opportunity to make the comment. But Kanata is the second highest rental numbers in the province right now, second only to Toronto. And the average market rent in Kanata is $2,732 a month. And that's the second highest in this province. So in terms of community need, there's another community that will say we need lower rent, which means we need more housing, which means we need more rental housing to bring those rental amounts down. And I just give that to you because, as I said, I sit on planning committee. I hear all the different arguments, but I do hear you in terms of medical. Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you, Casey, for the clarification. But about the rent, I think that's maybe related to the house size in the community. But in Kanata North, the house size is relatively maybe larger, so the rent may be higher. If we look at the size of apartment the developer proposed, is 2-bedroom around 600 square feet. That's really small. It's so that's it's not it's not conform to the community styles.
Thanks for your question there, David. Santa, any final comment?
I think we have a problem now with the meeting session.
Sorry. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah. I can hear you, Andrew.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, David. Do you have any final comments, Santan?
I thought I heard a question about the size of the units. Not sure exactly what the question was. Sorry.
There was a comment about the size of the 2-bedroom being, in David's view, potentially too small.
Okay. Like we are proposing 680 square feet. Like it's a range from 680 to 913 square feet. So there's, yeah.
Okay. Thanks. I'll run through a few written ones just because there are several and I could maybe go through them quickly. There are a few questions about the land ownership. So the current, the past landowner. So does Ironclad currently own the land? Do you know who previously owned the land?
Sorry, can't hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Oh, okay. Again, I would request Michael to talk. I don't think we're at a liberty to disclose the private deal that goes between two parties.
No problem.
But Michael, could you comment on this?
No, that's true. We would not comment on the vendor and the transaction, or the terms of the transaction itself. We're in the process. We haven't taken title yet. I can tell you that.
Perfect. Another question here. Am I, the resident, correct to state that the R5 zoning permits up to 9 stories?
The zone that we're proposing, it's R5 subzone AA. The maximum height permitted is up to 6 stories. However, policies do support up to 7, but the max limit is 6 stories.
Perfect. So it's the subzone that makes the condition there. Okay. Is the developer, Ironclad, aware that the current zoning is not simply LC, but LC 1706-811, which lists specific exemptions, including a 2-story height limit?
We are aware there's the current zoning is local commercial, and there was a previous application, I believe, back in 2008 that limited the height to 11 meters. Yeah, we're aware.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the final one before I pass it back to the oral questions. I'll rephrase this. What is the development's like rationale for a 15-minute neighborhood? So what's your case to cite a 15-minute neighborhood at that location? How does that contribute to a 15-minute neighborhood?
So that kind of goes back to the official plan designation, the Transact area policies, the designation of this area. It kind of relays into the 15-minute neighborhood because it's kind of surrounded by a town center, which is the Kanata Center. And it's supposed to be connected by a future train station or a rapid transit station that would be along the major corridor that runs east of the property, and Terry Fox being the minor corridor. Those are the key aspects of any development or any neighborhood development policies for being a 15-minute neighborhood. That it has to be close to a town center, it has to be close to minor and major arterial roads, and a bunch of policies in terms of housing and commercial and industrial and employment lands.
Great, thank you. I'll pass it over to Akbar now.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I thank you for the meeting. I have a understanding that at least in the Innsmill and Sheltonia Street, maybe around now around 200 people, 200 family living. How the city decides all of a sudden in a small area there, how could decide? I mean, add another 200 family there in an area that I don't know, even is not 100 of that area that now 200 people living. And if you come here in summertime, in that playground for the kids, we don't have enough place for the kid playing. Now you want to double that. The kids that playing in the soccer field always are crowded. And I don't know how this decision goes away, or how they will decide to do such a thing that in this area, all of a sudden, they double the population there. And without any other changes, without adding playground, without adding soccer field, without adding the parking area there.
Just have 30 more seconds there, Akbar.
Okay, when there is a soccer play there, people have to come and park in the streets. I don't know how city will approve that. That's my question.
Thank you for your comment. Yes, Santan.
I can give a quick comment on this. So again, the densities and the growth of the city is guided by the official plan. So the growth management part of the plans and the policies guide us that all the development, or the 46% of the development in the coming 25 years is supposed to be within minor corridor areas. So that's the guiding tool. And on top of it sits the Ontario provincial policy statement, which also promotes housing and diverse type of housing along these main corridors. Talking about the parks and the way that plays out, I can't really comment on what parks would request. We did, in our pre-consultation, we did reach out to the Parks Department for initial comment. And again, this information or what the requirement is for parks has to come from that department. They will be giving us options whether we can pay cash in lieu in terms of park land dedication, or actually dedicate some portion of the land for parks. If you see our site plan, there are open like outdoor amenity areas and green spaces maneuvered within those 3 buildings. So that's all for the Parks Department to comment on whether that actually meets the need, or we have to do something extra to meet the minimum requirements from the Parks Department.
Rick, thank you, Santan. I'll pass it over to John McGregor now.
Hello, Andrew. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Just I have a few comments to make, and I'll just start with I'm a longtime resident of Innsmill Crescent, 24 years. And I can confirm the history of the development history on the land in question. There was previous commitments from the city and previous councillor Marianne Wilkinson that we had many meetings in those years past. And the agreement at the time from the city was that there would be a 2-story limitation on that land. And that's what really appeased the community. And the city was in agreement with that. It's unfortunate, Kathy, I heard your comments earlier. It's unfortunate that the city really no longer values those previous commitments. I mean, we see that a lot in Kanata. I mean, the golf course comes to mind. I mean, that's been in the news today as well. It's very unfortunate. A note on the traffic, Patrick made a good point. It's 2 kilometers from my house to the Queensway, and it sometimes takes me 15 to 20 minutes to make that drive. So I purposely avoided, at busy hours. So I think we would definitely be adding to the traffic congestion.
Just 30 seconds there, John. Sorry.
Yep. The trees behind the properties, they were planted 20 years ago. So that land used to be owned by the city, and the city planted those trees. They were about 5 years old when they were planted 20 years ago. So they're about 25 years old right now. I think that it's super critical that they be protected. I'm glad to hear that's been taken into consideration. I realize my time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I realize my time's up. My last point I want to make, and I think that everybody is in agreement that the biggest problem that everybody has is the 6 stories. Nobody wants 6-story buildings staring into their backyard, and that's where the biggest problem is going to be for myself and the community.
Thanks for the comment and background there, John. Anybody wish to comment on that? Councillor Curry, maybe?
Thanks for the history again, John. The second comment here, I'll definitely talk to Marianne, find out what the city's comment is on that. As you know, with the golf course, things change, people, change their views, and zoning changes and official plans change. But I didn't really realize what had happened there. So that's helpful for me to know. Keeping the mature trees, we have a city tree bylaw that is very strict in terms of trying to keep mature trees. I'm hearing a commitment to do that, but know that our city bylaw has a lot of power. And then 6 stories, again, like our city staff will make the determination about what they're going to think about that. And again, they'll listen and hear what everyone has said here. So we'll leave that to them and see what they come up with. But thanks for your history and your comments.
Thanks, John. So we are reaching the conclusion of our 90-minute session here. Farouk and Linda might be the last 2 that'll be able to get their questions in. So I'll just go to you both quickly for your questions. Farouk.
Thank you so much, Andrew, the councillor, and the developers for holding this information session. So somebody asked about the value of the development. I think it will be over $100 million based on the rough calculations, and that will generate about $1 million revenue for the city annually. So as councillor mentioned, that most of these, when they go to the city, they get approved because the city has a stake in it. They'll have income on it on an annual base. And most of the time, the community doesn't get anything back when these developments go ahead. Generally, when a development is done in a new area, they account for different areas to be like for commercial, for residential, for schools, for park, etc., etc. But later on, when you come and make changes, all those initial studies and assessments is under question now because everything is changing and the capacity is not there. So it's a question about capacity and demand. Councillor, you mentioned that all these studies come and then the city looks into a future that 10 years from now or 20 years from now, LRT will come here, probably, maybe. Then the developer does the study, they do one study at a time, they only look at their site. They don't look at all the other 20 different sites that are being developed at the same time. So they present, based on all the assumptions that they make, we hear some of them tonight, that like out
Just
of the
30
20,
seconds there, Farouk.
yeah, out of 200 people that are 200 families that are going to be here, they're going to generate only 10 trips in the morning. So all these assumptions are not being questioned. All the other things that are being built at the same time are not questioned, and everything's going ahead, and the community doesn't get anything in that. So I think the councillor's role is not to just water stamp what the city says; it's just to look at and hear what the community says. Thank you.
Yeah, no, yeah, 100%. Farouk. Like I'm here to represent what the community has to say, right? I honestly, when I come to these meetings, I just think I want people to understand, if you ever watched our planning committees recently, that even if I went to this committee and I said, you know, that if staff recommend this, then I'm arguing against a staff recommendation and I'm trying to make sure the community is represented. And I'm one vote of, I think, 12 on planning committee. So I just tell you that so you're prepared, because one of the things we always want to try to do is make sure that we can get in as much feedback to change the development to make it the best we can, and with the risk that I may just be one vote on planning committee and it may be an 11-1 vote if the community is this upset, right? But I am here to make your points heard and to make those arguments. That is my job.
Thanks. That's a lot, Councillor Gary. So the last person will be Linda. Apologies to Akbar and Trevor and to the many questions in the chat that have not been asked. They are noted, and I gather in future correspondence, Councillor Curry will make sure to answer them all.
Absolutely. People want to write in, right? We can get these questions out and get answers. So that's always an option. And you know, our email is kathy.curry@ottawa.ca. But yeah, let's.
So there you go, Linda. Last task, your question.
The sign-in login. So what I think we may need to make one concept clear, that when we talk about the community, we are talking about the community, the residents who have been living in Innsmouth and Sheltonia for 20 and even more years. And as one of my neighbors said, we will welcome a local commercial building, medical center, grocery store, and anything that serves the community. When we're talking about a new residential building, especially with such a high altitude and so many units, we are talking about introduce new members to this community. And we will welcome new members to our community. But when we think about the safety and the interest of the local community, we may have different ideas. And I just live hundreds of meters from that site. We work there many times a week. And as far as I noticed, it's a pitifully small piece of land. Even that's half the size of the Innsmouth Park football field. And we were just surprised when we are hearing that a 6-story building will be built there, and 200 units, more than 200 residents will move in this small area. And also, as we know, the intersection at Kanata Avenue and Terry Fox Drive is infamous for its safety record. So many traffic accidents happened in the past few years. And when we think about a high-rise building like this, at that corner, I can't imagine how many more traffic accidents will rise at that intersection. And for this reason, merely for safety reason, I strongly against this proposal.
Thanks for your comments, Linda.
Yeah.
We
Thank you.
appreciate it, and they are noted and recorded. And to conclude my part, the meeting is recorded and it will be published subsequently on Councillor Curry's YouTube page and spread through our communications website and newsletter and the like, as well as questions can be directed to us, and we'll secure answers through the applicant to the extent we can. And I'll just pass it over now to Councillor Curry and the applicant for final remarks.
Yeah, my final remarks are simply that, you know, as Andrew said, we will send every bit of information we get out on this as far as widely as we can. And, you know, the kanatanorth.ca website has the opportunity for you to sign up for my newsletter. Every 2 weeks, I send out every update on anything, including links to more information and information on how you can give your feedback. So there's a number of ways to keep apprised of what's going on. And of course, the community voice, as I've said, is on this, and they will cover this story and probably give you more information in the story as well. One last thing I would say is I'm sorry I didn't notice that Naomi Nakamura and Sheila Sim, who are also from the Kanata North office, are also on this call. I didn't notice until I went down 2 screens to realize that they were there, and now they are. So your entire Kanata North office is here and has listened and heard all of your comments. I've made all the notes on everything I've heard, and I will debrief with staff as well. But I really appreciate people coming out and telling us how you feel, and there's a lot more opportunity to do that. Any further comment from the developer?
We would just like to echo your response, and we'd like to take a moment to thank everyone for attending tonight, as well as Councillor Curry and the team for organizing the session. The community input is very valuable to us, and we'll take the comments and concerns raised today back to the rest of our team and for consideration. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you very much.
Thanks all, and the link has been, our website link is in the chat, just for your information. Have a great evening. Take care. Bye.